Right, I'll make a start, and apologies in advance for my croaky voice. I did a workshop yesterday with no mic, so I was talking loud. Then at the pub last night, and now there's no mic in here, so you're just going to have to cope with me sounding ridiculous. I apologise. Can you all hear me? Is this loud enough for everyone? Cool, right. So, first of all, thank you for choosing this talk. I know there's a couple of other awesome ones in the other tracks. I really appreciate you coming to mine. So we're going to talk about living off the web of lies. Before we do that, happy birthday, SteelCon. 10 years is awesome. I got my first pen testing job at this con, so yeah, it's awesome to be able to speak here again. This is my third time if you count a lightning talk a few years ago. I've been coming on and off over the years as well, so yeah, here's to another 10 years. Right, the boring slide. I know nobody cares about the CV slide, right, but a little bit of background on why I feel I'm kind of qualified to talk to you about this is probably worthwhile. So my name's James. I'm at 206 on most platforms, versions thereof of that handle. I'm currently a senior consultant at TrustedSec on the Targeted Ops team. So my day job is red team stuff, basically, and I have been in the industry 10 years-ish. A chunk of time as a developer before that, kind of half of this time doing red team stuff and the other half doing your normal kind of pen test, AppSec, that kind of stuff. So, things we're going to talk about. We're going to look at creating persona accounts, some OPSEC considerations, and then we've got a few examples of how red teams can abuse free trials and trusted services. So, I'm going to share a kill chain diagram with you. I hate the term. We're just going to have to deal with the fact that this diagram is on the slide because it illustrates my point quite succinctly. We are going to focus entirely on reconnaissance and delivery. The reason for that is everyone does all the other phases of this their own internal way, right? Like you buy tools, you have internal tools, whatever. I wanted a talk that would apply to as many people as possible. So yeah, recon and delivery is where we're going to spend our time. Why? Why this talk? Why do we want to do this? The reasons are many. So as red teamers, we want to emulate or simulate real adversaries, right? And I've got a couple of slides to show you that real threat actors are known to use things like this. We want to piggyback off the trust that's placed in third-party services. So, as we'll see as we go through this, and I'm sure you're already aware, there are some huge companies out there doing things like email or web hosting or stuff like that. And every other company out there uses them. They use them to talk to their clients use them to talk to them. Have you seen what happens when Cloudflare has a bit of a moment and half the internet goes down, stuff like that? Like, you can't block these services easily. They are widely trusted. And because of that, it means we get to abuse them to do bad red team things. We want to prevent easy attribution of our work by the blue team. So it's kind of awkward when the blue team guys start trolling you on Twitter because they easily attributed your phishing campaign back to you, right? That's always a bad time. We want to force them to investigate the incident up to a point in a realistic fashion. That's one of the aims of a red team operation, right? So we're testing all the technical controls and the response, so we want that to be realistic, not just, oh, it's red team, we don't need to worry about that. We want to prevent attribution by the services that we're abusing. People tend to get a bit angry about you using their free trials for bad red team stuff, so we want to kind of hide the fact that it's us doing it. And we want to allow access to multiple copies of these free trials, right? For obvious reasons, you're not intended to have more than one of these, otherwise you just don't pay the company any money. We want lots of these because we want to avoid crossing the streams. This is a term I'm going to use throughout this workshop, and what I'm trying to imply here is that if you use the same free trial for multiple clients or multiple engagements, you run a very real risk of accidentally sending something to somebody you shouldn't. Crossing the streams is bad. We want to avoid that. So threat actors are doing stuff like this, right? Here's some examples. First page of Google Hits when I was putting these slides together. We've got Cloudflare tunnels used to deliver malware, DocuSign web forms used in phishing campaigns, the Microsoft shutdown of the O365 dev program due to abuse. This is apparently related to the big Microsoft hack. I don't know if they ever publicly stated that it was the reason they pulled it down. Of all the ones, this is probably the one that impacted us as security professionals the most, right? The loss of E5 tenants was a big loss for anyone wanting to do cloud-related research stuff. And then SendGrid used to host phishing attacks. There's other evidence out there of threat actors compromising credentials for things like DocuSign for legitimate accounts and then using them to send phishing emails to other people. So this stuff is being used. And as I mentioned, companies trust these services. So some stats, DocuSign DocuSign have about 2 million clients. SendGrid sends about 150 billion emails every month. I'm a little skeptical on these last two stats, but they are what I have, so we're going to roll with it. 85 to 95% of Fortune 500 are using Azure, and 80% of DAX companies, like a German stock exchange related thing, US Navy, NASA, DoD, are using AWS. So, as I mentioned already, it's kind of impossible to block something like SendGrid at this point, right? Like, you would have a huge business impact if you just decided to not trust SendGrid for receiving emails or SMS or whatever else they're doing these days. You literally cannot block services in Amazon. Like, it's not that easy. You will take down half the internet if you try and do that. So this trust is there. We want a part of it, right? That makes our lives easier as Red Team operators. The title of this slide is going to trigger people in the audience. When I say attribution can be easy, what I'm referring to is like attribution of blue team, like attributing stuff back to the red team. So for those of you who don't know what this is the AAD internals Recon as Outsider module, and until recently, this is either being patched or has been patched. I can't remember when Microsoft are fixing this or not. But you could put in a domain name into this tools on Microsoft.com, and it will show you all the other domains that are linked to that tenant in Azure. So if you have an Azure tenant and you add custom domains to it, you can get them from this tool, or could. This goes the other way, right? So we know Microsoft.com is going to be related to the Microsoft tenant. That's kind of obvious. But if we look at one like Xamarin.com, people may or may not know what Xamarin is. It's a dev-related thing. It's owned by Microsoft, but you can put that in, and it will tell you that it's related to Microsoft. So we have two problems here, right? If I send you a phishing email, and I'm hosting it in an Azure tenant, and I've named it something silly, like Trusted Sec, Red Team, Awesome Tenant, you as a blue teamer can go and look this up and say, oh, it's Trusted Sec, so well, we don't need to care about that. It's Red Team stuff, whatever. We have the other problem from the previous slide, that I've just burned all my other phishing domains on that tenant, right? So there's a good chance I'm using one of those domains for evil. I'm probably using all of them for evil. So now my OPSEC fail could potentially compromise not just my other engagements, but also my colleagues' engagements and the people in the other teams in our place doing like social engineering, pen testing, that kind of stuff, because we put them all in one tenant that's like attributed to Trusted Sec. So when I say attribution can be easy, this is the kind of thing that we really want to avoid. That would be a catastrophic failure from our point of view if somebody just burned all these domains, right? We want to prevent attribution by the services that we abuse. So we are probably violating some terms of service. Like, I don't care about your terms of service, but I know you as a company do. We may use these services legitimately in our company. Like, lots of places use DocuSign for HR-related stuff, things like that. If you are abusing something like DocuSign over and over and over again to do red team stuff, and it's easily attributable to you, so let's say you're just signing up with a bunch of @trustedtech.com email addresses, and they figure that out, you run the real risk of them just not doing business with you at all. So you've then lost the ability to do it for like red team stuff, and also your HR department is incredibly angry because they can't like send DocuSign stuff to people anymore. And for some organizations, reputational damage is a real risk, right? It's less relevant to pen testing companies. Like, nobody's surprised when a pen test company is doing pen test stuff. That's not a shock. If you're on an internal team, that may well be a concern that you want to sort of avoid happening. Like some of the big financials, internal household name brands, things like that, they can be a bit twitchy about knowing that their internal team's work has been like attributed back to them. The rep damage thing is a real risk for them. I'm going to say it again, with a Ghostbusters meme, don't cross the streams. It would be extraordinarily bad. The scenario, like the nightmare one here, is let's say you're using something like SendGrid to do all your emails on one account, and you don't clean up after your engagement. You leave some like live client email addresses in there, and you misclick something because you're rushing one day on a Monday because you need to get your phishing campaign out, and you send a live phishing campaign to a client whose engagement window is closed. Or, the worst case, a client who isn't particularly happy with you and wasn't planning on coming back to you next year. You've just fished somebody out of scope, and in the UK, that's illegal, so we really don't want to do this. Right, OPSEC stuff. What do we want to achieve? Well, we want to mask our real identity from the blue team and the service provider. That's the main goal here, right? Like, we're not trying to teach you how to do crime, like, we're not going to use any of this stuff to evade Interpol, stuff like that. It's going to be, fairly trivial to figure it out if you're law enforcement, but blue team aren't law enforcement, hopefully, otherwise you are going to have a problem with that. We want to allow multiple identities to be easily created, so building these things is hard. If we can make it easier and back them with already fake identities so that there's some sort of chain there, cool, we're going to do that. I'm not going to touch on management of it, but when you're building these things, you want to keep it kind of organized so you understand maybe what's related to what. So if you burn a hosting account, it doesn't take all your other stuff with it by accident. And we want compartmentalization. So yeah, burning one identity doesn't just tear down everything else as well. So, a side note, getting AI to draw a triangle that doesn't overflow the bottom of this is incredibly difficult. It will lie to you and say, I've drawn it without the edges being cut off, and then show you the edges cut off. So this took a long time to create this. What I'm trying to show here is not like the way to do it. This is just kind of a suggestion. All of these things are optional up to a point. The illustration here is that creating the difficulty of creating these accounts kind of goes up as you rise up the triangle, right? So sock puppets are fairly easy, just an email address, right? Nobody cares if they get burnt. A real identity, unless you're like into serious crime, is impossible to create a new one of, so we don't want to burn those. And that could be either you as an operator or your company. Both of those would be real identities. Cover identity is really, it only applies if you're, let's say, on an internal team and you don't want attribution back to whichever company you work for. So you would be running things like your DNS hosting providers, AWS, that kind of stuff, under an identity that is just a shell company or a person that doesn't exist, something like that. So something where it's not like HSBC or whatever company name I pull out of my hat next time. The burn impact also increases as we go up this triangle. So obviously if you burn a cover identity and you have that hosting account torn down, the impact of that is quite big, right, relative to burning a sock puppet that you're using for LinkedIn. Like, those are two very different things. As I've said, we don't need all of these. They don't need to be related. This is just for illustration. So pick and choose things from this, like, according to your needs. Don't do it all because James at SteelCon said that that's the way to do it. That's not what I'm trying to say. Again, don't cross the streams. So when you create accounts, if you're using a LinkedIn account, don't connect with your real ID or company on LinkedIn, please. Like, I know it opens the network so you can see more results, right? But a good, like, threat analyst is going to look at that LinkedIn account if it gets reported and say, oh, that's weird. They're connected with a bunch of companies and one pen testing company. I wonder what that could be. Don't friend your own profiles on social media. The same thing applies, right? Like, you don't need to be friends with your sock puppet account. You know what they're going to say. They know what you're going to say. Like, there's no need to do this. And don't use cute names. I can't remember who it was that used Ann Attacker for a LinkedIn account, not like fairly recently. Like, yeah, it's fun, right? But also, if we're trying to use this for real operations, that's just incredibly foolish. So let's talk about creating identities, and then we'll get into some examples of actual things we can do. So what do we need? We need a name, right? We've got some slides on name choices. That one hopefully is obvious. We need an email address. We need a phone number. Lots of services now require you to use a phone number when you register. It's just a way of reducing like spam signups and stuff. This last one is completely optional. You might want a way to pay for stuff. So if you're on an internal team using a cover ID to do your domain name registration, you're going to want to pay for that, right? I very strongly suggest you don't use your own cards for this, even like temporary cards on Monzo. You're linking your real financial identity to an account which is going to be associated with like hacking. And if there's ever the scenario where that gets fed back to the bank, that's probably not a good place for you to be in. So use company assets because they're not yours, right? A lot of big payment systems in like huge megacorps will have a way of generating temporary purchase cards that don't have a name associated with them. You can just use them with the company address and stuff, and it comes out of your pool in that kind of accounting system. Use one of those. You're going to need a phone number. This isn't essential for everything, but it will be required later, so we might as well just grab one while we can. You can't use Google Voice in the UK, sadly. There's more options for this in the UK. I think it's a legal thing in the UK, but I'm not entirely sure. You can, however, just go and buy a prepaid SIM, stick a tenner on it in credit. You can do that with cash in the newsagents still, I think. This is the one example where using your own card to pay for this is perfectly fine, right? We're not going to use this for social engineering calls or anything like that. It's just to activate the number so we can receive those like verification codes.
Phones want a actual contact details of your personnel?
They do, but I lie. Lying is a thing. I've never been asked to show ID for these things yet. Again, this is something that we're going to come across throughout this. Like, there's always a compromise there. If you're ever asked for ID to buy this stuff, give them your real ID. Doesn't matter. Like, that's a judgment call that you have to make. But if it's linked to your real ID, probably don't use it for crime, right? That would be a terrible decision. And then you're going to need a handset. So I have an old like contract upgrade one you've got in the drawer. You can buy them for like 20 quid on Argos, whatever. You just need a phone number. And email. There are a bunch of free email providers, right? Everyone should know about Hotmail, Gmail, those kind of services. There are some advantages to Gmail, which we'll see in a couple of slides' time. It might apply to other providers. I've never checked. I just always done it with Gmail. You could register a domain and have a custom domain with an email attached to it. There may or may not be a cost associated with that, depending on how you choose to set that up. Or you could create a shell company, essentially, like buy a domain, stick some hosting on it, and then you have lots of different kind of email addresses from staff, like employees who work there. Gives you some other advantages if you put more effort in. So if you build that out, you could probably use it to buy a code signing cert. You could buy a PO box under that company's address and ship stuff there if that's what you wanted to do. You do need to be aware of like business related laws if that's the way you go. Like using a shell company to like do some email registration is fine. Like creating an entity and having it have like a tax presence and stuff is probably an area you want to get like some legal advice on. Choosing a name, this is harder than you would imagine. So for individuals, you want to make it simple and forgettable. I am blessed with a very simple and forgettable name, right? Like if you say James Williams, that is not like outstanding in any way, right? I could introduce myself to you and you can forget me like 5 minutes later. That's the kind of name you want for these kind of accounts. With one exception, which is if you're going to do physical, like on-site stuff, you want to avoid using your real name. The reason you would use your real first name only for doing like on-site in-personal ops is you respond naturally to your first name and you sign your first name kind of instinctively, right? So if I introduce myself as James O'Dell, which is one of my own, like my old ones I used to use doing these things, and later on and I'm on that site, somebody else, hey James, I'm going to turn around and look at them, right? It's a normal thing for me to do. If I introduce myself as Paul and somebody later yells, hey Paul, and I just blank them, that's a very unusual interaction and it erases suspicions and people notice stuff like that. Pick a last name that's common for whichever area you're in. You'll know which ones they are. You know, just B.A. Smith or Williams or Jones, whatever other like surnames that are common where you are. Please don't use jokes, right? Memes, film references, famous hackers. Like, if you introduce yourself as Emmanuel Goldstein at some front desk one day, somebody will call that out. Like, somebody will recognize the reference and ask awkward questions. It's best avoided. For companies, you want to be avoiding being overly specific. So if you call yourself Bob's Plumbing Company, and then you're doing like IT support calls or trying to sell IT support email stuff as part of your phishing campaigns, people will rightly ask why a plumbing company is doing this. If you've ever seen a builder's van or a company van with a name on the side and you're like, I have no idea what this company does, those are the kind of names you want. Because if you're not specific and nobody knows what you do, you can do anything. Again, short, simple, usually the best. Make it easy to spell. You'll probably have to read it out at some point, so like avoid like weird spellings and stuff. But yeah, simple, short, and sweet is the way you want to go with these. And then photos, finally. Lots of services need photos, like LinkedIn especially. Social media accounts, it's normal to have a photo. You'll probably want one. You probably don't want to use a real person's photo for this, right? So taking a real person's photo from another platform and using it on a malicious account is way outside of what I would be comfortable with. You should probably all be not comfortable doing something like that. Luckily, we have AI, so these are just directly generated by GPT. It's one prompt. Obviously, you can change any attribute of these people you want to fit the account you're making. Just create a fake person's headshot. Whatever sort of style you want is doable now with AI. Cool, so that's the background bit. Let's get on to creating some accounts. So the first one we're going to look for is Cloudflare. You probably know Cloudflare for its DNS hosting, right? That's kind of well known, especially in red team pen testing circles. It masks the origin IP and all this stuff. We're not going to touch on that. As I say, that's all kind of fairly well known. But they do email routing. Now this gives us the ability to receive email on a custom domain for free. Yes, we need a domain name, but that's just a cost you're going to have to eat. The Cloudflare free tier, it's not a free trial, it's a completely free tier, will let you do this. So you host your domain's DNS on Cloudflare, you configure email routing, and it will add the DNS records you need to receive email. It will just do that automatically for you. You do need to verify the receiving account. So the way this works is it forwards it to another email address. So your Gmail account, for example, they will just send you an email to that account. You click a link and then you can forever send emails to it through Cloudflare. There's another option, which is workflows. Now, I'm sure there are some very interesting things you can do by triggering workflows based on incoming email. We're not going to touch on it in this workshop, but yeah, go and have a look at what you could do with that. It looks kind of like this, right? So you can have catch-all, and I've got catch-all on this to drop. It's handily obfuscated my incoming email addresses. That's useful. I left these on purpose because I don't care if you sign me up to spam. I'll just turn them off, right? The Gmail account I did mask because I'm not that silly. That one I do use. But these ones you can just create some contacts. So this is my domain that I don't use for anything. And it just forwards to Gmail, and you can turn them on and off. So if you feel a need to sign me up to stuff, I'd rather you didn't, but if you do, I can just turn them off. It's no big loss. We can do more with this. So Gmail will allow you to send email from a custom domain. You have to do a little bit of setup, which we'll see next. But if you set that up and you set up Cloudflare to receive email, you essentially get custom domain email for free. You probably don't want to use this for like phishing. Google tend to get a bit tetchy about you using their services for like red team pen test related stuff. If you do that, make sure it's a burner account that if they nuke it, then you're not going to lose your entire like personal email history or whatever. So the way you do this, you create an app password in Gmail, you add another email address to your account and say treat it as an alias. Feel free to take photos of this URL, by the way. This has the full like walkthrough on how to do it. You use the app password as SMTP auth creds within Gmail, and then once you've done some DNS config stuff like DMARC SPF, you can send email from Gmail as an alias now. So this is incredibly useful if you just want like access to a non-free email account domain name with email address, which we'll need later on. I use this to run. I'll call it a shell company that I do some locksmith stuff through. It exists to get me access to trade accounts, essentially. And it's all done through Gmail and this Cloudflare setup, so they can send me email to a custom address, and if I ever need to email their salespeople, I can send it from the same address. So we also get Turnstile with Cloudflare, right? So this is a capture service. The reason we might want to use captures, when we send phishing emails, unsurprisingly, we want users to visit our phishing sites, right? So we need them to be able to click links and stuff. But we don't want bots to visit them. We don't want them like archived by Google or the Wayback Machine. We don't want email security appliances being able to like crawl that page and mark it as phishing. Other examples of these would be Google vCAPTCHA. That's kind of the big one that everyone should be familiar with. This is very high friction for users. So if you're like trying to convince a user to do something they don't already want to do, and they're going to have to log in, and in front of that you're getting them to try and like Google self-driving cars, they're just not going to do it, right? There's a good chance they'll just give up and come back to it later, which we don't want. We want them to do it now. Turnstile, on the other hand, is very low friction, or it can be seamless depending on how you configure it. It's free. It's also not Google, which is good because they get tetchy about us abusing their services. You can have up to 10 of these, I think, on a free tier account. You can delete them and add more. There's not a hard limit. It's just 10 at any one time, or just create another Cloudflare account because they're free. If you've not seen it, it looks like this. So you slap one of these in front of your phishing landing page. It does the bot detection stuff for you. Users get through, bots get blocked. It's that simple. This is as complicated as it gets for the user. They have to tick a box. And they do have test keys for dev environments. So if you're like building like complicated phishing landing pages, you can just register some test keys that will always pass and always fail. So you can test the workflows that way, which is kind of cool. And they do have a bunch of other useful features. So we have serverless, which, you can do a bunch of cool stuff with serverless. You do the DNS origin masking, which most people should already kind of be aware of. And we have zero trust. This has been abused for C2 in the past. I'm not going to touch on it again. This is a slightly older article. I'm fairly sure it's probably still possible to do this. And they are fairly lax of abuse reports. So I've had a couple of my like phishing sites reported in the past. You'll get a banner in your Cloudflare dashboard. It'll say, hey, we've had an abuse report about your domain. You need to fix it. You can just delete it. Like, take it out of Cloudflare, and they just forget that problem ever existed. Obviously, if you do delete it, go and change your DNS records, because otherwise you can do a domain takeover on these things. But yeah, just tidy up after yourself, and the problem goes away. And if they do nuke your account, well, just create another one, right? It's free. They do very little in the way of actually checking who you are. So, LinkedIn. This is still the go-to for identifying staff at companies, right? There's other things like Hunter.io, those kind of services exist. LinkedIn is still the one. If you really want to target specific like groups of users in a company, you're probably going to end up on LinkedIn at some point. It used to be that you could just create fake accounts all over the place and they didn't care. They've got much better at detecting that and enforcing it over the years. And if they suspect an account is fake, they are going to ask you for proof of ID. And unless you're willing to use fake ID to try and get a LinkedIn account, which I am not, that's the end of your account, right? They'll just delete it. So when we create these, we want to try and treat them like a real person. So we want to interact with people. We want to grow contacts organically. They want to have a profile photo. These are all things that normal users do. They don't go on there, create an account, and start like sending massive amounts of connection requests or trying to scrape the API, stuff like that. You want to put the time into growing it. It's not one of those that you can do on a Monday and use on a Tuesday. It's a you should have done this 6 months ago kind of thing. Lots of companies will have these that they kind of share amongst operators, and they might pay for like recruiter access and stuff like that. It is worth building your own if you don't already have one, and just maintaining it, keep it ticking along, and then if you ever leave that company or they stop paying for it or the account gets nuked, you have a fallback, right? So you're not trying to build it on Monday to use it next day. Some tips for creating accounts on these platforms. You want roles that naturally attract connections, right? So like recruiters, business development people. If you'd say you're a software developer, people don't tend to make friends with software developers unless they know them, right? That's not... There's no gain in that for the people that we're trying to interact with, but a recruiter, people tend to interact with them. They're like, I could, have something in my favor from this person at a later date. Young professionals tend to get the most engagement. Unfortunately, female accounts tend to get more engagement as well. I'm a dad of 2 girls. I wish this wasn't the case. Sadly, it is. That will probably get you more engagement. When you create these, you want to create a backstory, make sure the dates align, so you can't be 25 years old with like 15 years career history and an education history and all the rest of it. It has to line up a little bit. Pick an employer who's large enough not to notice you. So if you say you work for like a small little recruitment agency who has 10 staff, they all work in the same office, the algorithm will suggest you as connections to those people at some point in the future, and they will ask awkward questions like, hey, I don't know you. Everyone who works here is there, and you're not one of them, and that's how your account gets banned for being a fake account. Assuming you use something like a recruiter, you'll naturally get connection requests over time from other recruiters, people looking for roles in the industry and stuff like that. Just accept them. There's no reason not to connect with these people. It grows your network. Respond to some messages if you feel like it. Please be like ethical with that, right? If people are desperate for jobs, especially in the current climate, don't like lead them on with like, I can get you a job, please connect with me stuff. That's not okay. Connect to people from your university, like pick somewhere that you went for education, just connect with some people there. No one's going to remember, like if you age the account appropriately, no one's going to know you weren't in their class. Just connect with them. Somebody will accept it. You can be quite strategic with that and choose universities where lots of people in the industries that you're trying to target would go from. So we're all in the UK right now. There's no reason why you can't be an American on LinkedIn and go to like Harvard Business School or Stanford or MIT or one of those like prestigious places where like Apple and those kind of companies are hiring from. You can do that. And if you connect with people from those places, you're probably going to grow your network into those companies that you might already be working with. So set up MFA, add a mobile number, why not? We've already got one. Do stuff normal users would do. Don't access the account from the work VPN, right? Those things are incredibly cursed. People use them for testing. They are blocked everywhere. It doesn't end well. Use a internet cafe. God, internet cafe. I am that old. I remember internet cafes. Go to Starbucks, use the free Wi-Fi, stuff like that. This is less important for accessing the account, but setup, you probably want to do it from like a clean IP address. And yeah, if you're going to approach users via LinkedIn for SE, so like sending malware over LinkedIn chat, stuff like that, you probably want to build another account for that purpose, because that is a very suspicious, highly likely to get you banned kind of activity. It's more work, but at least you don't lose your main kind of recon account. So scraping LinkedIn is useful, right? They have a lot of data, and we want that data. Unfortunately, other companies and recruitment agencies and stuff like that over the years have also figured out that LinkedIn has a lot of data that they might benefit from, and they kind of ruined it for the rest of us. So it used to be you could just automate the LinkedIn API, and that was totally cool. You can't do that anymore. If you do, they'll just ban your account. Browser automation tools is a way to get around this. Frameworks like Selenium, Puppeteer, those kind of things. You can just script the user interacting with the site and then just let it run in the background. You do need it to be consistent with normal user behavior. You can't like log in and just start spamming like 30 profile access requests every second. That will trick the bot detection. You have to scroll through it manually in these frameworks, but at least you're not doing it. Right? It's one option. I wrote one of these a couple of years ago. I've worked at a couple of other companies where people have developed similar things. Like it does still work. I am a little sort of twitchy about using this kind of thing. Like any automation of LinkedIn, they get better and better at detecting stuff, and I don't want my account banned at this point. I've had it for like 5 years. I want to keep it now. But there is a better way. So we can set up Burp Suite. We can browse LinkedIn through Burp Suite. We can filter by current company, whatever thing you want to limit your search results to, scroll through the results, And Burp will capture the API requests and responses in its history, right? That's what it does. So we have all the data, we just need a way of carving it out of that. Tool release time. So I have made a Burp Suite plugin for this. This is entirely passive. I say I made it. Claude made it. If you like the code, I made it. If it's terrible, Claude did it. This repo is now public. I made it public earlier on, so feel free to grab that. This does not send any traffic to LinkedIn. It's not automating it. You have to do it manually. So bear in mind standard user behaviors, scroll through some search results, open users' profiles in new tabs to have a look, stuff like that. This should all be people who work with Trusted Tech, by the way, so hopefully nobody's going to be offended by their name being on the screen. So it will carve out their name, position, a location, the profile URL. It will figure out if they're a premium member or verified member or whatever else from the badge. It's got a timestamp in there, and then you can export to CSV button up there and just dump it all to disk for later use in your bad red team stuff. So that is the way that I'm currently doing this. I'm fairly sure that this one is safe. Like it's standard user behavior, just capturing the data like out of band. So yeah. A little OPSEC warning, you will inevitably add connections over time to these accounts. Like these are not the sort of thing where you can just create one for one engagement and throw it away. It takes time and work. If you only add connections from your clients, what you're doing in effect is replicating a portion of your client list into a LinkedIn account, which is probably public. Now, you may or may not care about that, but it's probably best practice to not limit these to only your clients, right? Muddy the waters a bit, connect with random people, random companies, recruiters, whatever else, delete some connections after a while. Just be mindful of the fact that you are putting your client list out on the internet if you only use your clients on these services. Cool, so DocuSign. DocuSign is widely trusted. Most people have probably encountered it at some point, especially during like HR hiring related stuff. It is easy to see if a client uses it. We've got a slide on that in a minute. It is fairly hard for email security appliances to analyze. So for those of you who don't know how this works, you get an email from DocuSign that links to a document that is kind of like a PDF, but not a PDF, in a hosted environment owned by DocuSign. And that chain is harder for an email security appliance to analyze than like link phishing page. Emails are sent from DocuSign domains, so they come from like these high trust domains. Documents are hosted on DocuSign owned subdomains, so again, high trust, kind of hard to block, and we can get a free trial. So if you've not seen one before, this is what it'll look like. This is an example from 2018. If you've seen like an Angry that I used, an example from 2018, feel free to ban my long inactive account. I don't really mind. The bits we get control over of are the logo. I can't remember if this is on a paid tier or not for the logo, but if it's not, it just says DocuSign, and it's, yeah, whatever, it's kind of standard. You get this big call to action with the like review document button, and we get control over this stuff down here. So we can like edit the text in this. When you click that button, again, this is just from Google Images. It's nothing like personal. It's on Google Image Search. You get something like this. So you will have the document that they've uploaded, and there's these placeholders where you can put signatures and like names and dates and stuff, and then this finish button. When you mash that finish button, that's what submits the document to the person who sent it, and that like flow of signing the document is complete. So I said it's easy to figure out if a company uses these. It is. DNS text records are magic, right? If you're not doing this as part of your recon, you should be. Nobody cleans these up when they verify the services they use. They're always there. So like this one, for example, it discloses it's using DocuSign and a few other services. That doesn't mean we can only target clients that are using it. People will have used this anyway, and it doesn't mean you can't target them if they're not using it, but it does give you an idea of if their staff will be used to sending and receiving DocuSign related emails. So go check your DNS text records. So DocuSign is really more suited to fake invoice scams, right? Like that's where we tend to see it abused by threat actors the most, is like a fake invoice comes in from DocuSign that wants you to transfer stuff to like a random bank account. I am not going to do that as a red team operator, right? Clients get angry when you steal their money, but we can use it for other stuff. It's just a little harder to come up with convincing pretext. So some examples that have worked for me: send a blank document and elicit reply emails that way. So if you hit reply to a DocuSign email, it will arrive at the email account associated with your DocuSign account. So users can reply to you, and you can start a bit of a rapport that way. On a similar sort of approach, send them a document to sign that is just obviously a mistake. Like it's just not intended for them. It contains a bunch of like incorrect information, and hope they reply to you. Or option 3, which we will see in a moment. Before we do, we need to understand a little bit about how we create these documents. So you would normally upload a PDF or a Word document or an image, I think. There's a few formats they support. PDF is kind of probably the easiest one. You attach that to messages in the DocuSign UI. You add placeholders to the document for things like signature, date, name, those kind of fields. You do have to repeat that for every recipient, which is a bit of a pain, but it is what it is. But we can create custom ones. So you can add URLs to these documents. This is out of the DocuSign support documentation. So they give you a way to add a URL to a DocuSign document. You can control, obviously, all parts of that, and it kind of seems like a hack because the tooltip should not be containing a URL, but they've botched it together so it works, and I'm fine with that. This is the support link if you want to see the full walkthrough on how you do that. But what does that mean? It means we can add URLs to our documents, we can control the style of the text, the size, we can add underlines, that kind of stuff. And it's free. This is in the free trial version of DocuSign. So we can now send an email to our client from a trusted domain that links to a document hosted on a trusted site, and we can put a phishing URL on it. You do have to obviously have your phishing URLs trusted and all of the usual things you would do with phishing URLs, but that chain is fairly hard for email security stuff to analyze because it's a few different hops. I've not had anything flagged from that yet by automated scanning. Obviously, you do need a pretext that encourages the user to click that link, so you'll have to get creative with that one. I'm not sharing mine. Why am I still scrolling? That's not what I want to do. Come on. There we go. Stop scrolling. Right. There are a couple of limitations to DocuSign. So you only get 3 envelopes in the free trial. An envelope is their terminology for a container of messages, basically. Each of those can only have 5 recipients, so you get a total of 15 sends before you either have to create a new one or upgrade the account. The problem is both limits are enforced, so if you send a test email to yourself, that's 1 envelope. You've only used 1 recipient, but that envelope is burnt, so you then only have 10 recipients remaining, so you need to bear that in mind. You have a maximum of 15, so testing these things will drop that down to 10. You can upgrade the account. It's not that expensive. It's something in the region of about $20 to upgrade to the next tier. Again, you can use purchase cards for that. That's fine. They'll quite happily take your money. If you get these reported by SOC, they will cancel your account. They'll just nuke it. But they are nice enough to give you a refund. They will send you your subscription refund back. Don't ask me how I found this out. So MailChimp. Delivering email is fairly hard, right? People have been sending spam emails and phishing and everything for a long time. Companies are putting a lot of effort into making sure that those don't land in their users' inboxes. Nobody wants spam and they don't want their users getting phished, so they're putting a lot of effort into controls to sort of prevent you from sending phishing emails, domain age, domain reputation, all those kind of things play a part in it. Marketing teams want to send emails, right? That's still a big part of their job, is sending big mass email campaigns to try and either drum up more revenue or keep in touch with clients, whatever they're going to do. And they were finding this kind of process hard, right? So when there's a problem, inevitably a company will spring up that's focused on solving that problem, and we have that in the sort of mass email space. We've got MailChimp, SendGrid is another example. There's a couple of other big players out there that their entire job is to do this. And they've put a lot of effort into the research and everything else, setting this up so that they can do it. They've worked out the sending rates that don't get you flagged by spam filters. They have high reputation sending domains. They walk you through the process of setting up your emails with the relevant DNS records and all the stuff you need to ensure that your emails land. And they also give you other cool stuff like analytics and tracking. And you'll normally find that those tracking links, the pixel stuff they use, are trusted. So you tend to get fairly accurate stats from this, which if you're doing a social engineering engagement is incredibly useful, because then you get click rates and all the rest of it tied to the individual user that you can then just slap into your reports. Why are we going to reinvent the wheel when we can just use something that already exists? They do continue to make it harder to sign up to these services, right? They really want you to take a paid subscription. But as of Monday, when I put these slides together, you can still do a free trial. You just have to click through a few different menus and all the rest of it. It does require a business email, so you probably want to either pay for one or set something up with the Cloudflare and Gmail thing. It's just receive only. They don't need SMS. It's an optional field when you sign up at the moment. So if you go to their website right now, you'll see these big yellow try for a pound buttons. If you dig into another menu about the service levels they offer, then it will mention that there's a free option. They still really want you to take the standard one. And if you click through another couple of options, you get to the bit where you can actually sign up for the free one. When you click that, you'll have to fill in your usual stuff like passwords and background information and all the rest of it. And then they will ask you again if you really, really want the standard one. You have to do a drop-down list and pick free, and then they will create you an account. What do we get for our no money that we're giving them? We get some free templates. They're not great, but they're perfectly serviceable, right? They're just basic email templates that we can drag and drop elements around and rearrange. We get the tracking and the analytics, which are really cool for like just taking screenshots and sticking them in reports, having nice accurate stats. You can add custom sending domains to here. So there's I don't think there's a limit on there. If there is, I've never hit it. Like you can run multiple phishing campaigns for your engagement off one of these accounts just by adding a bunch of different like sending domains to it. And obviously you have to own the domain. They will walk you through the adding the domain process and make sure the DNS records and stuff are set up. And you have 500 contacts for free. So contacts are like you upload a name and an email address and then you can do mail merge kind of stuff. You get up to 500. That's not a hard limit. You can delete 200 and then you have 200 available. Like you can just delete them and re-add them. The templates look kind of like this. So they are basic, but in the WYSIWYG editor, you can like remove all these elements. You can add logos. You can import your own images, all that kind of stuff. The only thing you can't do on the free tier anyway is stuff like building email templates and code. They do support this. You have to pay a couple of subscription levels higher. If you want to pay for it, you can import from URLs, import from zips, all that kind of stuff. Those are paid features. And you have to include that email footer. This has the branding in the free version. It has MailChimp slapped all over it. That doesn't matter greatly for phishing, right? These services are so pervasive that companies are just used to ignoring those email footers. It also has the unsubscribe link in. They are quite strict about like respecting the unsubscribe link. If anyone hits unsubscribe, you can't send emails to them again. They have to be. And it has your registered address in that footer as well. So when you go for the sign-up process, they'll ask you for your business address. You can just put a fake one in, right? Like lie. It's okay to lie. You can change that. So if you want to use a different domain and you don't want to like cross the streams and have the same company address in those emails that are going to the same client, that is something that threat intel people will look at. If you get two phishing emails reported, they'll combine them into one campaign based on stuff like that. You can just change it in the UI, but don't forget, and then don't, like this is a global setting, not a per email send setting, so you just have to kind of keep track of what you're doing with that. If you pay to upgrade this and your campaigns get reported, they will cancel your account. You'll lose access to all your stats, so you probably want to keep screenshots of those as you go. And these people won't refund you if they cancel your account. Again, don't ask me how I found that out. So word of caution on this one, they will let you build some quite interesting campaigns in the UI. They do checking when you hit send, and they really don't like it when you impersonate other companies. So especially big ones like ServiceNow, ManageEngine, those kind of places that are often targeted for like impersonation scams in phishing emails. They will flag that. They have some other checks that they do. I forget the name of it, but they have like a bot that they run all these emails through, and it looks for like indicators of phishing going on. If that flags, they will block your account. I think there's an appeal process, but going through an appeal process to talk about why I'm impersonating ManageEngine, that's not a good time. I've just lost that account. And yeah, they are really big on impersonation, so avoid it. The way you get around this is just don't impersonate those kind of companies through this sending mechanism, right? There's other pretexts you can use. Be your own company, be a small one that never heard of, just create something out of thin air and use that. Again, don't ask me how I found this out. So, some final thoughts before we wrap up. We're pretty much bang on time, which is quite nice. So for the Red Team guys out there, we've only just scratched the surface of what's possible here. Right? There's so much stuff you can do with free trials. So do your recon, see what your clients are using, go and look at those services, see if you can get free trials or free tiers, and go forth and do cool Red Team stuff. Think outside the box, right? Like go do your own research time on what is accessible to you as a trial or a free tier, and figure out ways that you can abuse it. Building new TCPs like that is how we kind of push the industry forward and get more value for our clients. So it's always a worthwhile thing to do. And don't forget to mix up your TTPs. If you decide to just take the 4 examples in this talk, for instance, and use them over and over and over again, first of all, you're not really giving your clients that much value after the sort of second, third time you've hit the same client with that like flow of doing stuff. And it is also like an IOC at that point, so it attributes those campaigns back to like one threat group when you're doing like blue team threat hunty type stuff, it becomes an indicator of compromise that this chain always happens, so you want to avoid that. For the blue teamers out there, educate your users about this stuff. Like, phishing awareness training is generally pretty terrible. I've never seen one that ever touches on abusing like free trials like this. So make your users aware that these things can happen, right? Define processes for them to raise concerns about like DocuSign emails that are coming in, asking them to click links in emails. That sort of thing isn't normal, and they, if you don't tell them that there's a process there, how are they going to know what to do with it? Test your controls, right? So work with reputable pen testing firms, your internal teams, whatever you have. Build social engineering campaigns and ask them to specifically use these kind of techniques and see how all your controls respond to them. Test your report phish buttons, see how they respond to them. Are they just ignoring DocuSign emails because it's DocuSign? Like, you need to know that. And talk to your vendors. Ask awkward questions. Like, if you're paying a service provider to protect you against phishing, ask them the awkward question. Like, hey, what do you do when somebody sends a DocuSign email? Make it awkward. You're paying them, right? There's no reason for that conversation not to happen. And then assume breach mindset is always going to be the best approach, right? So you can plow money into stopping, like me, landing phishing emails and getting access to an endpoint. Somebody always clicks. Like, it's just, they might not do it for my engagement, but they will when the threat actor comes along with a better campaign, or they have more time, or they just get the tired user on a Friday. If you can make everything from that breach onward pain and misery, you're going to be in a much better spot than just not having any optics over it at all. Update your playbooks so you can understand how to respond to these kind of things. Right? These companies don't make it easy all the time to report abuse. So if you can write down where these abuse report things are now, and then you come across one of these like in a live campaign, you know where to go to file the abuse report and get all that infrastructure torn down. I struggled whether I should leave this last bit in or not, and I decided to. We're all on the same team here, right? I am trying to help your companies be more secure, just the same as you are. A little bit of professional courtesy is always greatly appreciated with stuff like this. The implication of you reporting my accounts and getting them banned basically comes back to your report, right? I lose access to stats. I have to put the effort into creating new accounts. I get it. Attribution is hard. We don't always get to deconflict stuff. Accidents happen. It's cool. But, if there's ever an opportunity where it's the red team and you can make that choice, we'd all really appreciate it if you didn't go as far as filing the abuse report, right? And finally, for vendors, recognize that your services will be abused. Like, this is the first step to sort of fixing some of this stuff. If you have a service and you have a free trial or a free tier, people are going to abuse it. Take those reports seriously and act on them. Make it easy to report abuse. Like, it's okay having an abuse at email address, but if nobody's monitoring it and you don't do anything with it, it's kind of pointless. Work with your internal security teams or trusted pen testing partners, whatever you have. Do the work. Figure out how you can abuse these things. Run tabletops, do live exercises, understand how your services can be abused, and then you can build monitoring and controls around it so that you can proactively block these things, right? You're not waiting on your users to report them. You can just tear them down. You can flag accounts. You can do all that kind of cool stuff. And that is it. We're at the end. If you've got questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, I think you've got 9 minutes. And if we could get to the pub, that would be awesome. I really appreciate you all coming to my talk. Thank you.